Time to review one of my favorite games of all time, Jet Grind Radio. After experiencing a game like this, it's almost impossible for me to contain my excitement and do a straightforward review, breaking down the parts of the game and comparing them to whatever else is available on the market. The problem is, there is no reference point for Jet Grind Radio. Smilebit has effectively created a game that's about art. Although Sega's careful to make the distinction between graffiti as an art of vandalism and an act of art in a game disclaimer, it doesn't change the fact that Jet Grind Radio glorifies tagging as a rebellious form of expression. The plot hinges on a useful disobedience, putting players against rival factions whom fill their narrative locations with spray paint. You'll be joining the GGs, an ever-growing band of outcasts with lots of personality. Challenge is almost entirely predicted by the availability of spray cans, the placement of sometimes out-of-reach areas you'll have to be tagged, and the government stepping in to put an end to the madness. Empowered by the rocket skates, you'll be able to traverse difficult landscapes with ease, or at least that's the intention. Utilizing your skates to pull off grinds and wall rides throughout the suburbs of Tokyo. Narrations are provided in between levels by the energetic DJ Professor K. He's the man of the underground pirate radio station dubbed Jet Set Radio, from the game initially drew its title. It's fitting that as a game centered around artistic expression and rebellion against social norms, Jet Grind Radio was the first video game to ever utilize cell shading in a three-dimensional environment. Cell shading has added such a unique fun quality to Jet Grind Radio, ensuring that it will never age visually. While many developers seek to accomplish some kind of realistic visual appeal, this game presents another side of the coin which has previously been explored in the titles such as Comix Zone. What this style looks like is a whole bunch of clashing of vibrant colors, with each object being contained by heavy black outlines. It's a classic Disney cartoon come to life, only with such potential energy and enthusiasm put into the designs of each character and location that it's almost tiring to look at. This is all appropriately accompanied by a killer soundtrack that ties into the idea of a pirate radio station, which plays music that can only be described as electric. The combination of visuals and audio have never been so effectively intertwined. Perhaps one of the drawbacks of the new visual style is the occasional negative effect on the gameplay. Some camera angles can be problematic at times. The L button resets the camera behind the player, which can often misguide your timing, as you frantically attempt to escape from the military firing squads or heavy tank units. There are a select of narrow passageways that come to mind where this plays against the game every time you try your own way through. Sometimes the over-agitating controls can add to some frustration. For example, after you've cleared each set of levels with any given gang or group of taggers, it becomes necessarily hard to face off against them in their turf. Spray painting 3 of their members 10 times each. It seems easy enough, since they follow different sets of paths and never deviate from them, but each member of the opposing team has to be sprayed from the behind. Often you'll wind up running into them as the icon pops on screen telling you that you're in a good location to spray them, but you're temporarily stunned after taking on the damage. This can be very frustrating. You're typically allotted more than enough time to get each one, but after you've gone through a whole run and had the last guy down to a couple of more sprays left until you win, it gets kind of discouraging when you wind up losing due to the timer running down. Often at times, you'll be lined up to tag the opponent and will run straight into them, causing you to go into shock for a couple of seconds while they make their getaway, and then you have to start in the process over. You'll be lined up to tag the opponent and will run straight into them. If it's not that, you'll often find yourself catching up only to take unintended detours, either by the way of a rail or you didn't mean to land on, or by hitting an object while jumping. Sometimes it can be hard to gauge where the players are going to land or how much airtime they have, so this tends to happen far too often until you get a good grip on the gameplay mechanics. Once you've gotten it down, you'll be linking trick combos and grinds in endless chains. Jet Grind Radio feels different than any other game out there after you have an understanding for how the gameplay works. Before long, everything will come naturally to you, and at that point, the gameplay flows. Those are my main gripes, none of which should stand in anyone's way if they still haven't played the game. Jet Grind Radio is one of those games you just can't put down and will continue to return to for many years to come. One of the really cool things about the game is the process for tagging. Sure, it's just directional commands, but it just feels the way you imagine it should be in a video game. There are 3 varied levels of difficulties for the tags, with each character differing in skills. Some characters have extremely easy tags and require far fewer spray cans in order to execute them. More adept graffiti artists can't carry so many cans, yet require more in order to do their spraying combos with increasingly complex directional commands. Also, graffiti spirits are scattered about each level, and once collected, they'll unlock different tags, which you'll be able to change for each of the 3 sizes. It's some added incentive for collection-oriented people to further explore the creative level designs. This might sound a bit simple-minded and silly. If you've never heard of Jet Grind Radio before, I assure you, the plot is entirely insane and nonsensical up until the very end. That's really not my style. I don't like games that think they're funny or think that they got more style than they do. However, that's not Jet Grind Radio. It has an overabundance of style and personality around each bend and fits all the aspects that should make up a perfect game into one tight package. This is my idea of how Flawless looks, sounds, feels, and plays. It's not so much that it gave me a new standard, but it has certainly refined how I view innovation in gaming, so much containing my bias. Jet Grind Radio gets a 10 out of 10 for me at least. This is Red Wolf signing out, and I'll see you next time. Peace.